This is the worst GPU launch ever. So many unnecessary lies about the performance, so much bad marketing, and don't forget about the huge shortage. It got so bad to the point where even the last generation of GPUs are in shortage. I am talking about the RTX 4090 here, not to mention the RTX 5090, which is basically unobtainable at this point. We will talk about all of that and more in this video, but first let's start talking about the lies. And the thing that bothers me the most here is that they don't need to lie. Their new GPUs, in my opinion, are not bad. The RTX 5090 is still an improvement over the RTX 4090. Like, think about it. The RTX 5090 has a 25% increase in MSRP, but it also performs better, maybe, kinda. Look, jokes aside, it is a better GPU, and it does perform better, but to claim that it performs 2 times better than the RTX 4090 is just stupid. The problem here is that the RTX 5090 is actually pretty good. It is still 30 to 35% better than the RTX 4090, depending on the game, and if you want to take full advantage of the GPU, you need to play at 4K. By the way, if you were wondering how I got that number, go ahead and watch Gamers Nexus review. Unfortunately, I don't have the GPU to review it. It is out of stock, and even if it was on stock, I have grown quite attached to my kidney, so I won't be buying it. Thank you very much. With that aside, let's take a look at Nvidia's marketing. How did they get away with lying to us, you might be asking? Well, because they kinda sorta are telling the truth, but not really. Like, if you look at this chart, it talks about performance, and the gray line represents the performance of the RTX 4090, and the green line is the performance of the 5090. So when you take a look at it, I wouldn't blame you for thinking RTX 5090 2 times faster than the RTX 4090, because look at the gray line, it's short, the green line big. But in reality, if you look close enough, it tells you that these GPUs have DLSS 4 enabled. The problem I have here is that DLSS 4 is just frame generation. The GPU is not actually performing better, it is not generating frames from the actual game. It is just a new and improved technology that just generates frames based on what it thinks the game will look like. I mean, Nvidia, you can say that it has better features, say that because of the features it actually performs better, because it actually does, and the features are important. But to just say, look, this is the performance, look at the lines, that's just not fair. Because let's be honest, the majority of people are not going to understand it. We might, because we know how unrealistic it is for a GPU to have a 100% improvement over the last generation, but normal people won't come to the same conclusion. And keep in mind, this is not just a random kid saying Nvidia is good. This is the official Nvidia webpage. Before you say just turn DLSS 4 on, well, the game still needs to support DLSS 4 for you to turn it on. Granted, there are a lot of games that have this feature, but there are a lot that just don't. Now back to the performance. I don't know if you know, but someone said that the RTX 5070 has the same performance of the 4090, and when I say someone, I mean the CEO of Nvidia.
With the Blackwell family, RTX 5070, 4090 performance.
Yeah, he said that. And to be honest, we don't have the RTX 5070 because it hasn't come out yet. But what we have is the RTX 5080 and the RTX 5070 Ti. And throughout history, the 80 performs better than the 70. So with that logic, let's take a look at the RTX 5080. Now, you might think that Nvidia has maybe lied to us a bit, and the RTX 4090 isn't actually as good, but they are close with the RTX 5070. If that was all, I wouldn't make a fuss about it. But if that was the case, then the RTX 5080 would be better than the RTX 4090. The 5080 would perform better, right? Right? In reality, it doesn't. The new RTX 5080 actually performs worse than the 2-year-old RTX 4090. Right here, there are 2 things that I really hate. First, lying, of course. Since the RTX 5080 is worse than the RTX 4090, then there is no way the RTX 5070 is actually better. And just so we are clear, when I say the RTX 4090 is better, I mean it has more performance, it has more power. Nevertheless, with DLSS 4 enabled and the other features, the RTX 5080 might reach a higher frame rate, but there's also a problem with that. We will get to it. And if you don't believe me, go and watch whatever reviewer you want. They all have the same thing to say when it comes to pure performance. Anyway, what is the second thing I hate? Nvidia is treating us gamers like game devs are treating us. They look at us like whales. They just want to make us spend more and more and more. Just think about it. When the 30 series came out, the RTX 3080 wasn't that much worse than the RTX 3090, and yet if you wanted a good GPU, you could always go with the RTX 3060, which was a really good GPU for the time. It had great performance. The same can't be said for the RTX 40 series. The 4060 was bad. You need to go for the RTX 4070 if you wanted to have an actual decent upgrade. But the 4080 was still on par or better than the RTX 3090. So if you wanted, you could always go with that. But that changed with the 50 series. The RTX 4090 is better than the 5080, which means that the 5090 and the 5080 are really far apart in terms of performance. The difference is anywhere from 30 to 70% depending on the game and on the settings. In this video, I am just trying to make a point of how the industry is going to shit. Basically, if you wanted a good experience, Nvidia is telling you that you need to buy our most expensive GPU or you won't have a decent experience. That's basically what they are telling us. And don't forget, the RTX 5080 is considered a high-end GPU, and a high-end GPU being worse than the last generation of GPUs is just bad. Granted, you still have access to newer features if that is something that interests you, but still it needs to have that performance uplift, or at least mention that. Say that the major improvements that we have done with this new generation of GPUs are only software wise and we have more AI shit, and we would be happy gamers. We would still buy them, we would know what we are buying. Let's be honest, the 5080 is less of everything the 5090 is. It's almost half less than everything the 5090 is. That leads me to the next problem. We gamers, we are not stupid. We know that Nvidia is lying to us. We know that the performance gains are not going to be that massive. We know that because we are not stupid, but god damn it, we are weak. We know that it won't help us that much, but still, if we have the money, we will buy it because we just can't resist the temptation, and Nvidia is taking full advantage of that. You see, they went from making the low-end GPUs, the 3060, the best value, to making the 4070 in the next generation, to now leaving just the 5090 as an option if you actually want an improvement, and that still you can't get. Let's be real, the chances of you getting one right now are slim. They are not just slim, they are razor thin. Like I said, they are pretty much unobtainable. Nah, you might be like, damn them scalpers. Well, if you said that, you are wrong. I mean, they are doing their thing, but still, you are wrong, it's not their fault. Nvidia just never properly supplied any of the shops that sell PC parts, so the gamers never got to actually buy them. Just think about it. People were waiting in lines to buy these GPUs, and Nvidia just supplied the shops with one or two or none of the RTX 5090 GPUs. There are shops that never got the new GPU, which is depressing. You hype the GPU so much. It is the only GPU that actually has an improvement over the last generation, and we can't actually use it. We can only look at reviewers telling us how much better it is. Talk about a paper launch. Even reviewers have a hard time finding these GPUs. Now let's talk about the DLSS 4, which is frame generation. I know some people call it frame regeneration, artificial frames, fake frames, and 100 other different names, but I like to call it frame generation. This is a big deal, and the main reason why it is a big deal is because Nvidia says it's a big deal, because they use it in every single one of their benchmarks. And the new generation of DLSS is only used for the new generation. Once the other generation comes out, you don't have the newest technology, even if you paid for the last year high-end GPU. For example, the RTX 4090, tough luck, you don't have DLSS 4. Now, what DLSS 4 is basically just generates extra frames. If your GPU can produce 100 frames, it can turn that into 400 frames. That was an example. The RTX 4090 has DLSS 3, which is the same thing, it just can produce a lot less fake frames, because these frames are not from the game. It is what your GPU thinks the game will look like. To be honest, they are getting really good at making fake frames. When I say they put fake frames in the game, they are actually putting more fake frames in the game than real ones, which is a lot. It's not like you playing the game at 50 FPS, it feeling slow, and you turning DLSS on and it turns to 60 FPS. No, Nvidia doesn't think that's good enough. It can produce 3 fake frames for each real one, so that 50 FPS can be turned to 200 FPS. Now, this sounds like magic, I know, but it has its caveats, and it has a lot of them. You would be forgiven for thinking that in the future, if your GPU can make 20 frames, you can play the game at 80 FPS. And that is true, you can do that, but it wouldn't feel right, because you still need to have a playable FPS to be able to enjoy DLSS 4. If your FPS count is low, you will have a higher FPS, but the game will still feel laggy and it will have a lot of image tears and it will look weird, which means this technology is not supposed to make your game run from a unplayable frame rate to a playable frame rate. It turns a playable frame rate to a better frame rate. But if you have a playable frame rate, I don't know how much you would need a higher frame rate compared to needing it when the game is unplayable. Anyway, that's for Nvidia to decide, not for us. Who cares about us? Now we need to talk about input lag. If a game generates fake frames, that means the input lag will be higher. You know, the higher the frame rate, the lower the input lag. But that's only true when they are real frames. If you have fake frames, then the input lag will be really bad. And Nvidia has some kind of a solution for it too. Nvidia now has Reflex 2, which lowers the input lag. Basically, it wraps the frame to put the latest CPU generated frame in, which makes the frame look even weirder. And if your frame rate is low and you have DLSS on top of it, then it will just look stupid in my opinion. And that leads me to the next problem I have with AI and other features like DLSS 4, because through it Nvidia can claim that the RTX 5070 can match the performance of the RTX 4090, because that's actually the only way it can. And honestly, I am expecting the difference in pure performance to be so large. Even with all of the fancy AI bullshit, it still might not beat the RTX 4090 at every game. It will probably be similar, but it will have a lower frame rate, at least in some games, even in games that support DLSS 4, because the ones that don't, the RTX 4090 will win. That's my opinion. The RTX 5070 not being as capable as the RTX 4090, I feel like is a fact. But even with DLSS 4, it might just be slower because these GPUs are just that bad. And by the way, I need to know, what do you guys think? Do you think that Nvidia taking into consideration generated frames from DLSS 4 and then comparing that result against the RTX 4090, do you think that is a bit misleading for the consumer, or is it just me? I need to know, because to me that's borderline lying. And don't forget, if you like the video, like and subscribe.